Hear your war cry, man. I'll tell you what, I don't know if you are ready for the excitement that we have for you today, but you better turn your volume up. Turn your volume up a little bit, get a little bit excited. If you need to do some stretching, now would be a good time to do some stretching. Get the blood pumping in your body because we're about to raise your energy level a little bit. The guy that I have on today for Warrior Wednesday is an absolute explosion. He's got a story with a history of adversity, not really adversity that you got to come, you have to adapt and overcome to different scenarios. He's got a survival story. He's got a support story. He's got a, you know what? I could show you better than I could tell you. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it now. But first, I got to do my all time disclaimer that none of us are doctors. This is a couple guys talking, and we're not medical experts. We have no training in that sort of thing informally. But I could tell you this: I'm just a United States Marine, and I was sent home to die after 3 years of intense Western medicine treatment for colorectal cancer. And at the end of it all, when I exhausted all Western medicine options, I found a solution in repurposed medicine. And based on that repurposed medicine, the research and things that were already existing, they were already published by Western medicine doctors, the same system that was pumping me full of the poison that I had previously gotten for years. So, so yeah, I used their own research and I compiled uh, what I call my cancer cocktail. And that was based on the logic behind the research that they had already published. So that the ingredients of that cancer cocktail consist of fenbendazole, antiparasitic, samidine, the active ingredient integument, AHCC, a collection of mushrooms. It's active hexose correlated compound. Active hexose correlated compound. Annatto, which is the only good parts of vitamin E, ANNATTO, and curcumin, which is an anti-inflammatory. Anybody with cancer usually is pretty familiar with that one. So those are the 5 ingredients of my cancer cocktail, and that is what I found a solution in. You know, it 14 weeks after taking that cancer cocktail, from start to the 14-week scan that I got, revealed no evidence of disease. At 6 weeks, I was 50% less disease. At 14 weeks, I was no evidence of disease, not anywhere in my body. And since then, it's been over 2 years. I've gotten 9 consecutive clean scans of no evidence of disease. Signatera tests, all of them negative, non existent. No cancer exists in my body. It's a reason to get excited for Warrior Wednesday. So, hey, listen, without any further ado, Terry Tucker is our guest speaker today. And boy, oh boy, I'm going to just show you. I can't even tell you. Here he comes. Get ready for it. Terry Tucker, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know. Did you even hear any of that? I don't even know if you could hear that.
I heard all of it. And
Come
Kevin,
on.
I'm really excited to talk with you.
Oh, I didn't. You told me before you couldn't hear stuff.
I lied.
Oh, man. Well, man, you know what? I thank you so much for taking the time. And I don't even know if you really say, could you? I don't know if you're like, you know, it doesn't matter. So we got the energy out there, and that's all that matters. And you know what? I'm so excited that we connected because I reached out to you for like a while ago, and then we missed each other. And I don't check my messages as much as I should. So yeah, so I'm so grateful that you made the time for me because I could only chase a guy, you know. So I mean, you know, so I don't, I don't like, I really feel like you should have an introduction worthy of yourself, but I don't have the words, you know. So I'll just go ahead and let you tell your story, and you introduce yourself. You introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I am Terry Tucker, currently living outside of Denver, Colorado. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall and actually played college basketball at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, despite having three knee surgeries in high school. After I graduated from college, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I moved home to find a job. I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. Fortunately, I found that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. Unfortunately, I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. Professionally, as I said, started out at Wendy's, and then I went to work for the hospital that cared for my father and my grandmother. And then I made a major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did during my law enforcement career was I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator. After law enforcement, I started a school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball, became an author in 2020. But for the last 12 years now, I've been battling a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma. And then just finally, my wife and I have been married for a little over 30 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
I I wanted to let that last word just kind of linger for a second. Space Force.
Space Force.
Space Force. That's, I mean, it's cool, right? I mean,
Live
that's,
long and prosper. Yeah.
I mean, that's, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about the newest branch of the military, but it sounds so cool to me. Like, it sounds so cool because it makes me feel like, like the future is now. Like
Yeah.
there's actively things going on that are beyond the Air Force's measures. Like not their measure, like beyond the Air Force's. Uh, well, it's a new exploration. You know, it's a new excursion into how to defend. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's all the Department of Defense, right? So obviously it exists for the purpose of defense, and then you have to think, why in the world would we need defense from the space? Well, then you got to think of every other country in the world has an active air station, and whatever. So, yeah. So you just it's very three-dimensional way of thinking. I think a very three-dimensional way of thinking. Anyway, I has nothing to do with anything, I guess, right? So, um, hey, you had mentioned something you kind of glossed over. Can we talk about basketball?
Sure.
What years were you at the Citadel?
1978 to 1982.
Oh, did not see that coming. Thought there was going to be an 88. I thought there did not
I'm
see the
old.
78 coming. Brother, how old are you?
I'll be 64 this year.
Oh, wow. Not, you know what? You look great. And
It's all those
but you
drugs I
said,
get when
no, I mean, listen, well, maybe it's the athleticism behind you. I don't know. but you look really, I mean, you don't look 64 like as if the 64 is old, because that's not old. Like, I mean, I told you earlier, I'm 50. And I used to think that 50 was old. And man, I feel like I'm 20 right now. Like I think I don't even I was never really good at math. You know, I just
yeah,
I mean, I don't
just a
really
number,
even,
right?
yeah, I don't really even, I want to be one of those guys that doesn't keep track anymore. Like
Yeah.
I know that doesn't really exist in real life, but like it's like you read about it, or you see it in the movies, like some homeless guy is like, oh, I don't even know how old I am. I want to be that guy. I don't want to know like the preconceived whatever, but um hey, you said you're an author in 2020. Would you write?
I wrote the book Sustainable Excellence 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life.
Come on. That's that's a broad explanation. That's a it
It is.
sounds
It's too long of a title. People do. That title's too long. It's sustainable excellence. Then okay.
yeah, I was gonna abbreviate it for you, but I was gonna find an acronym. You know, they would do an acronym. But but you know what? So in 1942, you were at the Citadel, and
Yeah, me and Stonewall Jackson, right?
yeah, so they erected a monument of you at the Citadel, and they've already torn it down. Is that
Yeah,
like through the woke nation? Like, I
Army
don't
Corps
know.
of Engineers. Yeah,
Yeah, but okay, so you play basketball at the Citadel, which is beautiful, beautiful. Gosh, I that area is just so beautiful. Like geographically, it's
yeah,
really just a beautiful place. But I mean, a lot of history there.
yeah,
Pirates, a lot of pirate history there in
yeah,
Charleston, right? Didn't they? There's some shipwrecks out there, isn't there?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like right off the what is it, battery something or other over there. I haven't been there
Yeah,
so
the
long.
battery. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Rainbow
Um,
Row, all the houses of different colors and all that along the battery. Yeah.
yeah. Do you ever go back there?
Haven't been back in a long time. My 40-year class reunion was the year before. Unfortunately, I'm an
You,
amputee and so in a wheelchair, so I wasn't able to make it back.
you now you're just making things up. You're 40 year, 40, you're just making up numbers now. No way I'm gonna buy that. So
True.
I well, you know what? You just said something that I wasn't familiar with. Like you said, you're an amputee. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I had my foot amputated in 2018. Had my leg amputated in the middle of the COVID pandemic in 2020.
Oh, that's a bad time to be in the hospital too during the
Yeah,
pandemic.
I mean, because of COVID, I literally my entire lower leg was full of cancer, so I had no choice but to have my leg amputated. The tumor had literally broken my leg, fractured my tibia, and my doctor had to get special permission because they were doing no surgeries. Everything was shut down unless it was an emergency. And the doctor was like, "Well, I can't put it in a cast; it's not going to heal." And I remember the morning of the surgery, my wife literally dropped me off at the hospital. There was a nurse waiting for me with a wheelchair. I was not allowed to have anyone with me. She wheeled me back into a pre op area, which, this big cavernous room with 30 different bays in it, all designed to prep people for different surgeries. I was the only person in that big room. There was nobody else having surgery. And I was supposed to be in the hospital 10 days to 2 weeks to work with therapists to learn how to function without a leg. I had a above the knee amputation. They sent me home after 48 hours because they were so convinced that COVID was that much of a contagion. So it's like, go home. And I mean,
So,
so I just had my leg cut off, and now it's like, go home and figure it out. So I did.
so your wife dropped you off, and I'm sorry, and I'm sure that this may be different than what I'm thinking, but I'm thinking like how I go into Moffitt Cancer Center, and they have like a valet there, and my wife drops me off at the valet, she has to park, and during COVID, they wouldn't let her in
Yeah.
for my infusions, so she would have to wait outside for 8 hours because we didn't live near, like we didn't had nowhere to go. We'd have to get a hotel or something so she could just hang out for the day because they wouldn't let her into the hospital. And so your wife dropped you off. In my mind, she dropped you off with four limbs, and when she picked you up, you didn't have anybody with you. You didn't have.
Wasn't allowed. I mean, she was like, what should I do? I'm like, just go sit in the parking lot and pray because my surgeon will call you. And he was really a great guy. He snuck her in after surgery just to say, okay, here he is, he's fine. Give him a kiss, and now you got to leave. And that was
Terry.
after surgery and that. So yeah, it was pretty scary
um.
for both of us, not just me, but for her as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. first, you don't know if you're going to make it through that surgery,
Right.
and then all of you is not making it through the surgery.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
list support a lot now. So I knew you'd appreciate that as a Marine.
I see what you did there. Man, you know what? I wasn't ready for that one. Not the joke, but this.
No,
I didn't know we were going in that direction.
it's part of the journey.
Huh?
It's part of the journey, you know?
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I mean, I try to not do too much research before these interviews, to be honest with you. I don't really want to know that much, but it's a difference between what fraternity you belong to in college, or I mean, that's these are different details. So, wow, brother. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
No, so this was in your introduction there. You said that you ended up with a rare form of cancer, and you kind of glossed right over that. But don't worry, we're circling back because it took a couple things from you. I don't have a colon, but I didn't use that to walk on. So, um, so what? How did this happen? I mean, what kind of cancer?
So I have a rare form of melanoma. It's called acrolitiginous melanoma. And most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun, and it affects the melanin, the pigment in our skin. Mine has absolutely nothing to do with sun exposure. This is a rare form that appears on the bottom of the feet and the palms of the hands. And so this is 2012. I had my own consulting company, but I was coaching at the time girls high school basketball in Houston, and had a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, right below my third toe. And initially didn't think much of it because as a coach, you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I made an appointment and went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine. And he took an x-ray and he said, Terry, I think you have a cyst in there and I can cut it out. And he did. And he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I received a call from him. And as I said, he was a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he was having explaining to me what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years, and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have this incredibly rare form of melanoma. He recommended that I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center to be treated, probably one of the best cancer hospitals we have in the country. And so I did. And they took the tumor out on the bottom of my foot. They took all the lymph nodes out in my groin. And then they told me that if I got a miracle, I might live 5 years, but more than likely I would be dead in 2 years because they had absolutely nothing to offer me in the way of any kind of treatment other than surgery. If it was somewhere we could cut it out, we'll cut it out. Other than that, you'll be dead in 2 years. And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I can turn this death sentence into a life sentence. And for 12 years, that's what I've been trying to do.
So that was at MD Anderson.
That was at MD Anderson.
Yeah, I went there too. I went to MD Anderson, Sloan Kettering, Mayo Clinic, John Hopkins, and Moffitt. So,
you made the rounds.
Yeah, no, you know what I did find out though, by making all those rounds, is that there's really no independent. There's really very well. I don't want to say there's no, but there's very few independent opinions. I think because you're going to get a second opinion, third opinion, whatever you get. But I think that those opinions are they're collectively based on the previous doctor's evaluation. Especially when you don't get the opinion in person, you just get a review of your records. So it's a huge difference. But what I did learn was that most of the opinions that I got when they found out who my surgeon was, or who my doctor was, or who my radiation oncologist was, or whoever it was. When I got the second opinion, turns out the opinion that I was getting was from one of their classmates that they were in the same class with. Oh, yeah, we did our residency together. Oh, we did our fellowship together, or whatever. That's not an independent decision. That's not an independent opinion. That is a class opinion. The class of 19 whatever, that's their
Yeah.
or 2000 whatever. It's that class. It's the whatever that whoever they were, whatever year they were indoctrinated. This is really
Yeah.
what it is, but so that was at Moffitt, and they it sounds to me like through I'm sorry, MD Anderson, and it sounds to me that they eradicated the disease from your groin and like the lymph nodes and whatnot, but that was at that point, that was just they took your foot, right?
No, not at that point. They just took the bottom of my foot off
Right.
and skin grafted over it.
And then
And then
and then the
they
groin.
put me on a weekly injection of a drug. I don't know if you were on this, called interferon, as my doctor used to say, to try to kick the can down the road. We're just going to buy you some more time. I took a weekly interferon injection, and interferon gave me severe flu-like symptoms. I had a horrible case of the flu every week that I took the injection, and I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years and knowing this isn't a cure. This is just buying me time. 2017, 5 years after starting it, I ended up in the intensive care unit with a body temperature, because of the toxicity of the interferon, with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is usually not compatible with being alive.
Yeah, it's
Fortunately, I
brain.
was at a level 1 trauma center. They were able to stabilize me. I remember waking up in the ICU, but I do remember one time I had sweatpants on, but my torso was bare. And I remember looking up, and my torso looked like, or the heat waves that were coming off of it were just the same kind of heat waves I'd seen, as a kid growing up. And you leave your car outside in August and it gets baked by the sun, and you see those heat waves coming off. And that's
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what my torso looked like. And I remember my wife tells the story. The nurse manager pulled her out, and as they were working on me. And the other thing about that, I was burning up, but I was freezing. I was so cold. They had warm blankets on me. They pulled the warm blankets up, stuck me in ice, literally in my armpits, in my neck, in my groin, just basically packed me in ice and gave me a hyperthermic drug in an IV. But the woman who pulled my wife out said, I've only seen one person with a temperature this high, and he didn't make it. Now, that's a pretty insensitive thing to be saying to a patient that is still alive, but we're kind of preparing her for that. So, yeah, so I had to stop the interferon, and that's when the cancer came back almost immediately in the exact same spot on my foot where it had presented, and that necessitated in 2018 the amputation of my foot.
So they took your foot in 18. So when did you get diagnosed?
2012.
So from 12 to 18, it was just chipping away at you, and then they ended up getting your foot in 18.
Yeah, I mean, the
Um,
interferon was horrible. I mean, I literally prayed to die. It was just, I was so sick of being sick. There was
yeah.
like the living camp and the not dying camp. And I kind of felt I was in the not dying camp. Wasn't productive. I wasn't doing anything. I was literally trying to survive day to day.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me what my goals were, I'm like, goals. I just want to wake up tomorrow morning. That was that was my goal.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand, especially the ones that aren't sick. There's a significant reason. There's a significant difference between surviving and living.
Yeah.
You're not thriving for sure.
No.
And a lot of times, you lower the bar. You lower the bar because, like you said, you just want to wake up tomorrow. That's so. Well, in 18, I got your foot. But it sounds like it wasn't enough.
No, it worked its way up my leg. In 2019, two more surgeries. And then in 2020, I had an undiagnosed tumor kind of in my ankle area, whatever was left of my leg, that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And I found out I had these tumors in my lungs, which I still have tumors in my lungs. I'm still treated for those tumors for an entire week, every 3 weeks, with a clinical trial drug now that
Oh,
does nothing to the cancer. But the way cancer proliferates in your body is it hides itself. It secretes an enzyme, a protein that makes your immune system not recognize it. And what this drug does is it removes that enzyme, that protein, so that my own immune system, just like you have a cold or a flu virus, can say, hey, that doesn't belong here. We need to attack that. And for the last 3 years, I have been on this clinical trial drug. Everybody else who was on it with me has died, and I'm sort of the last man standing.
you know what? I think you look good. I mean, I never saw you before, but you don't look sick to me.
I know everybody says that. And I had treatment a week before, and treatment wrecks me. I have a terrible reaction to the medication. I shake violently. I throw up. I have a fever. I have a headache. And you do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. By Friday, you're pretty much done. You could
Yeah.
sort of like roll me over with a steamroller. But I rebound, and I don't know if that's just my makeup. I don't know if it's my years in athletics. I don't. Maybe it's a combination of all of that. But I rebound, and then I get a couple weeks off, and then we do it again. And I've been doing that cycle for the last 3 years now.
You know, it's funny because, well, I said to you, I said that I intentionally don't dig into people. I mean, some people are, have notoriety because of their celebrity status or whatever, and obviously, you know what you know about certain people. If you're a comedian, then I know that you're a comedian, so I get who you are. If you're a preacher, I know you're a preacher, so I get who you are. You know, you're a survivor, and I don't know who the hell you are, but I read your bio and it motivated the hell out of me. But there were some things that were not in your bio, such as the things that we're discussing now. And all I do is see you from the chest to the head, and you know, you should always know who you're in the room with. You should always know who you're in the room with, and you do a very good job of concealing that. so so the audience is gonna love this, I think. No, I mean it's yeah. So I think you should just know who you're in the room with at all times, and you do a very good job of well, there's no preconceived thoughts about who you are before you meet somebody. Like it's just there was no guessing that this is the direction that this is going to go. So you don't play basketball no more, huh?
Unfortunately, not.
That was probably wrong.
No, I mean, it's not. I mean, I've been asked that. You spent so much of your life being an athlete and being in law enforcement and doing physical things. How do you justify where you are today? And my response to that is, when you can't do what you're good at, you do what's important. And I've been doing what's important since 2012. I've certainly evolved. I was not always this positive. I was not always this up. I got down for a while, but you learn to embrace the suck. I don't like these cards that I've been dealt,
Sure.
but I'm going to have to play them to the best of my ability. And I mean, every year MD Anderson, sends me the letter from the tumor board that says, circle one of these three. Are you alive with cancer? Are you alive without cancer? Or are you dead? So I keep hanging around because I haven't figured out how to circle number 3 yet. So it's just humor is a big part of this for me. I remember walking is not the word. I was kind of hobbling out of the hospital after I had my foot amputated. I was in this boot contraption, and there was a woman that was just staring incredibly hard in my direction. And I was kind of looking around like, who is she staring at? And I was the only person there. So I'm like, okay, I gotta play with this lady. So I literally, as I continued to walk towards her, as soon as I got to her, I stopped, I turned, I looked her right in the eye, and I said, "Don't worry, it'll grow back." And I kept walking. And I looked over my shoulder, and she had this look on her face. Well, will it? Is this guy like a salamander or something that, you cut off his tail and it grows back? I mean, what's the deal? I mean, so sometimes I can be kind of a smart aleck. And
Well, I think iron sharpens iron, right? Is what they say. And a lot of this, the energy that you have and the outlook that you have is contagious, and the excitement, the energy, it's contagious. And I gotta believe, like you said, you're not, you know, eventually the curtain closes.
yeah,
And when I'm out and about, I live in a small town, everybody knows me. And when I go out, it's showtime. But when I come back home and it's just me and my wife, and I'm as sick as I was, you know, things start to set in. When you're out and about, a lot of people are taking pictures, not because it's paparazzi, because everybody wants to get the last picture. Oh man,
yeah.
I just saw him last night. Look, we took these pictures. I just saw him last night, or in 6 years. Look, this is the picture. This is the night before he died. Everybody, it seems that way. I mean, I know that's probably not the thing, but to me, when I was at my sickest point, that's what I was thinking. Like, you get inside your head and you're always thinking about what's around the corner. And so when you get home and that bravery wipes off, and the curtain closes and it's just me and my wife, I remember crying to her like it was just nobody's business. And at that point, I had to lean on somebody to get me out of it. The only difference between a rut and a grave is 6 feet,
Yeah.
And there has to be somebody in your support system, that in your little support circle, that I have like 4 or 5 people that I lean on heavily. And I'm not high maintenance, but those days come where you got to make a call. You got to pick up the phone and you got to say, "Get me out of my head. This is happening." Even when times are good, I have that, because I hang on every word that my doctor says. And if they say something, just not even intentionally, it'll mess with me. Right. So, like, I have people, like I have friends that, I'm like, "Hey, this is what happened." And they're like, "Hey, come on, snap out of it." So somebody, you have to have that in your support system. So I can only imagine, well, you went through a lot of your process because of the pandemic and everything else. You were alone. And eventually the curtain closes and you're alone. But like you said, you're an athlete, you're a proud person, you have dignity and self-respect, and nobody's going to see you with a chink in your armor, and then the curtain closes and you go home with your wife. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a couple things. So I'll start when I found out I had these tumors in my lungs and I was going to have my leg amputated. I went with my wife to the mortuary and to the cemetery and to the church, and I planned my funeral. And it's funny because I do these podcasts and I speak to people and things like that, and I got some brushback from that, as if people thought that was defeatist. You're planning your funeral, and I kind of laugh. It's like I like, hey, folks, guess what? We all get it once. Death is something that I think about a lot. I mean, if you look at Stoic philosophy, memento mori is something the Stoic philosophers talked about all the time. That you need to think about death. That death is always present because death helps you to live better. And so when I had my leg amputated and I had these tumors in my lungs, my oncologist wanted me to go on chemotherapy. And I was 8 years into this fight. And I remember looking at him and saying, "Is it going to save my life?" And he was, probably not, but it might buy you some more time. And I said to him, if that's the case, I don't want to go through all that ugliness if I'm going to die anyway, if this is going to take me. I said, but I'll go home and I'll talk to my family. And it's my wife and daughter. We are a very close family. My brothers are still alive. I'm still close with them. And so I go home and I'm like, okay, here's what the doctor wants to do. And my daughter's immediately like, all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's three of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that. So we end up sitting around the kitchen table and individually talking about how we feel about me having chemotherapy. And when that was done, my daughter's like, all right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy? And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, wait a minute. Am I getting outvoted for something that I don't want to do? But I remember when I was back in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we love the most to class. And as we were learning different techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. And so I ended up taking chemo, not because I wanted to. And in hindsight, it was the bridge that got me to the clinical trial drug that I'm on now. But Kevin, I'll tell you this. I remember there was one time about 6 months after this that my oncologist showed me my CAT scan. And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read a CAT scan, but you can kind of look at it and say, well, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I had these big tumors in my lungs. I had fluid all around the pleural spaces of my lungs. And I remember looking at my oncologist and saying, how was I alive? And I will never forget this. He put his head down and he shook his head no. And then he looked up at me and he said, I don't know because you shouldn't have been. And what that said to me is God's not done with me yet. When I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. Don't spend nearly any time worrying about dying. Spend more time focused on the living part right now.
Yeah. Well, it does sound like you're doing that. I mean, you said that both your parents died of cancer?
My mom's still alive. She has dementia, but my dad died. He was diagnosed. I was diagnosed when I was 51. He was diagnosed when he was 51. He had end-stage breast cancer, which back in the 1980s, they did not know really how to treat a man with breast cancer. It's more common today. They told him to go home and die. And he lived another 3.5 years. And I believe he did because he had a purpose. He was in real estate. He loved real estate. He actually worked up till 2 weeks before he died. And I sort of tucked that in the back of my mind and said, when it's my turn in the barrel, I've got to have something to do. I've got to have something that I feel purposeful with. I can't just sit around and think about, well, I'm probably going to die this year. Or I'm probably going to die in 6 months. When I die, I don't care. Dying doesn't scare me nearly as much as not living scares me.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I mean, I think that your attitude is, well, if you had a different attitude, I don't think you'd be thriving the way you are right now.
I agree.
You say you feel good, and a lot of people vilify chemotherapy, and they think that because I turned to repurposed medicine that I hate chemotherapy or something like that. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I have doctors that, like, they're insulted because, medical oncologists. Now, the surgical oncologist, radiation oncologist, all the other oncologists, they're like, hey, dude, keep doing what you're doing because it's working. And like the medical oncologists, they are not as open-minded, and they're adamant about, well, in one breath, they say that I shouldn't be alive. In the other breath, they say the only reason why I am alive has nothing to do with repurposed medicine. Although they admittedly sent me home to die after chemotherapy was exhausted in a failure. So if nothing else works and chemotherapy is the answer, why doesn't why doesn't it work? I mean, who did it? Did it work on somebody? No, it didn't. It doesn't work. It doesn't kill disease, but it does build a bridge. It does suppress things long enough for you to get to where you need to be. And in your case, it was to that clinical trial. Had it not been for chemotherapy, would you still be alive long enough to get to that trial?
I don't think so. I mean, I mean, they were getting to the point where they were going to put me in palliative care. That it was like, if I didn't take the chemo, it was like, well, I can't do anything else for you. Just go be, comfort care until it's time for you to go. And
palliative care is not. Yeah, and palliative care is not curative care.
No.
There's a reason it has a different name.
Yeah.
Is it not curative care? It's palliative care, right? The definition of palliative. You're not trying to fix you. They're just trying to. So it's that's not a far shot from hospice.
Exactly.
So
right.
And honestly, I mean, I did an interview with the hospice chaplain, and he was great. In fact, I was in the Marine Corps with the guy, and 35 years later, we're talking about things, and well, my math is off, but anyway, so
close enough.
It's close enough, but so he opened my eyes to. I thought when I got put on hospice that was a death sentence or whatever. And I still do believe that. But he did open my eyes to some other benefit things that they do offer. Anyway, off the topic, but in your case, the chemotherapy did exactly what it did for me. It kept you alive long enough, ... Right? So it does have its place, and people vilify it all day long, and they assume because I'm not doing chemotherapy that I hate chemotherapy and that I hate Western medicine. And now listen, the people that operate in Western medicine are brilliant. They're great. I wouldn't be here without them. I have the utmost respect for them. However, it's my position that they could only treat you how they know how to treat you. And Big Pharma has indoctrinated the Western medicine curriculum for these medical schools. So the system is broke, not the doctors, not the chemotherapy, not the, it's the, it's way above that. Those people are angels, but the people that are controlling that other stuff, not a fan of those guys, but it's not what this is about. But still, anywho, I said that. So, but
you're right, and I've read, like you, I like to educate myself. I want my life to be based on the decisions that I made, not on the ones that I didn't make or that somebody else made for me. So I am constantly asking my oncologist, well, why are we doing this? Hey, I read this article. These two doctors in Portugal were doing a study with DHA, which is a fatty fish oil that's supposed to be good for your heart. And they just happened on the fact that it acts like a Trojan horse in cancer cells and kills them. I want to go on that. But can I do that? Is that, and I am lucky. I am at a university hospital, so I have access to an oncology pharmacist. I have access to different people that I can get information from. And they are incredibly gracious about providing me with that information. And so, yes, I get it. I've read articles, 97% of chemotherapy doesn't work. Yeah, I get that. But I'm like you, I kind of take traditional Western medicine and augment it with things that I eat, whether it's mushrooms, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's cold therapy, whether it's just different things that I do that people look at me like, you're nuts. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still alive being nuts. So, you can say I'm nuts all you want. This works for me. And it has worked.
Yeah, I think
Say that
I
again.
think that chemotherapy in general does work if you know what it's supposed to do. If my job is to empty trash cans and you want me to fix your car, well, I do work, but I don't do that work,
Yeah.
right? So don't say I'm useless because I'm emptying your trash. So you know what I'm saying? Like if you understand what the job of it is, then maybe you would realize that it does work. And the job of chemotherapy is to destroy everything in its path. It's not supposed
Fast
to,
growing cells. That's what it attacks. Yes.
yeah, it's not supposed to eradicate disease. It's supposed to destroy everything.
And it
So,
does.
and it does. But in doing so, that disease stays suppressed. And it does buy you some time. Like you said, it buys you time. It doesn't cure you. And if you think that it's curing everything, then you're going to think that chemo's a failure. But that's not its job. It's not here to fix the car. It's here to empty the trash. So I mean, maybe that's a bad analogy, but I think you get the point.
No, I
Right?
do. And my oncologist told me something that I think really kind of crystallized things for me. He said, wherever your cancer is, it's already there. It's already been there.
Yeah.
So when you got
Yeah.
diagnosed in 2012, I didn't have tumors in my lungs. He's like, yes, you did. We just couldn't see them. They weren't big enough. And he went on to describe
Good
how
point.
modern imaging, whether it's CAT scan, PET scan, MRI, whatever, the tumor has to be the size of a garden pea, which is about 1 billion cells, in order for us to see it. He said, so the cancer in your groin, the cancer in your lower leg, the cancer in your lungs was already there. So don't think that you did something that made it spread or made it move. It's already been there. We just haven't been able to see it because we're limited. As great as our imaging is, we're limited on the size of tumors that we can see. And so now it's like, okay, that's fine. So I don't feel like I did something that caused my cancer to move. Going back to kind of what you have done with yourself, my surgical oncologist, he said, you know what? Why don't we try something? He said, we don't do this anymore. We don't use this drug. We don't do this procedure. He said,
this is what I wanted to get into, buddy. This is where I wanted to go there, Terry Tucker. Go ahead, run with this.
So he said, what we're going to do is we're going to cut down to your femoral artery and vein in your groin. We're going to run tubes up and over into your cancerous leg. Because at the time, the cancer was isolated to my leg. Didn't realize I had these tumors in my lungs. And he said, what they do is they use a tourniquet. So they kind of cut off the blood supply to your leg. They heat your leg up and they pump warm chemotherapy through your artery and vein in kind of a constant loop for about an hour. Now you're out. This is a surgical kind of procedure, but I was stunned. The next morning, I had at least 50 residents in my room for rounds. And I looked at them, I'm like, anybody bring popcorn? I'm like, why are all these people here? Because they're not trained in this old technique of treating cancer.
Oh,
and they were fascinated. I'm like, so all you people were in there watching me. I said, I'm laying there, naked on the table, and you're all there. And they're all like, I'm like, thanks, great. Pony up for the peep show.
It's like the new age people learning about how they used to do lobotomy.
Exactly. This is old school stuff they don't do. Right.
Oh, that's awesome. So, well, it's nice to know that you were, what do they call those? A relic?
I am a relic. Yeah, really.
I don't know if that's the right word for it. I might have just insulted you, I think. I don't know.
No, you didn't insult me at all.
I don't know what that word means, really. I don't know. But so you have this current mess going on in your lungs, right? And did it start off as nodules that just became more prevalent, or was it something
really diagnosed at the same time? So I had that procedure that I just described to you.
Yeah.
And I had lymphedema, which is a swelling or a fluid retention in my lower leg. and they were attributing that to the procedure that I had just described to you. So they sent me to an occupational therapist
Okay.
who that's their specialty, to get fluid out of tissue. And I'd been with her for about 4 months. And finally she said, Terry, this should be working and you're not getting better. And so she said, I'm going to call the doctor and say, this is not right. Something's going on. You need to scan it. And so that she called the doctor, and doctor's like, okay, I'll scan it. So they did an ultrasound of my lower leg. And the ultrasound woman was like, I can't see anything. I'm like, what do you mean you can't see anything? I can't see anything. There's something in there and I can't see it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that led to a CAT scan, which was a full body CAT scan. And that was, your entire leg is full of cancer. Your leg is broken. And I knew that because I was pretty much walking with a walker because I couldn't put hardly any weight on it.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, you've got these very large tumors in your lungs. So it was, go in for a CAT scan first thing in the morning. By 5 o'clock that night, we're going to have to take your leg off, and you got these tumors in your lungs, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything for them. It's like, well, wasn't that just a great day?
So you gave up your leg, ultimately, not knowing if that was even anything guaranteed, because you still had the problems in the lung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, well, let me ask you this: what are you doing about it? You're on this clinical trial, and it seems to be working. You think it's effective?
Yeah, it has been, the tumors have remained stable. Initially, I was on this trial and I was scanned every 6 weeks. So when I would go to bed at night, I glowed in the dark. No, I didn't really, but I felt like I did because I was scanned so often.
Yeah.
And the tumors, the chemo shrunk the tumors, and then the clinical trial drug has kept them stable. And so they are, but the trial has been over for 1.5 years. My oncologist has gotten the drug company to extend me to a single person trial. So I'm the only person.
Oh, come on. So are you telling me that as soon as this resource is expired, what are you going to do to stay alive?
Well, the good thing about it is the drug is still being made because the FDA approved it. And I don't remember if it was cervical or ovarian cancer. So the drug is still being made, but it's not approved for my type of cancer.
Okay.
But it's still there. And as long as it's helping me, the people are saying, or the company is saying, sure, we'll allow you to continue to stay on it. And my problem with it was, well, why do you have to change the protocol? They're like, we need to redesign the protocol. And you know what they told me?
What?
People,
it was working too well?
No. They said people will not do what you need to do for this. They will not go to the hospital in the morning and stay there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, every 3 weeks. People are like, I'm not going to do it. I said, even if it saves their life, yeah, people won't do it. People won't do it.
Like I take fenbendazole paste amongst a cocktail of other ingredients. Amongst other ingredients in the cocktail. And people will tell me, oh, I don't want to take the paste. And I'm like, listen, it doesn't taste like anything. Like it doesn't, but it's horse dewormer. I said, okay, well, it also comes in a pill form. Yeah, but it's for an animal. Okay, well, the pill form is through prescription that you have to get from a doctor. Well, my doctor won't give it to me. Okay, so your doctor won't give it to you because it's not in their protocol or in their curriculum, from what they were taught. But it is available for human consumption in that version that won't give it to you. But you could get it like a Tractor Supply in an animal version with the same chemical compound. So, and I just, I've never had to ask permission from anybody to stay alive. And I won't even ask you if you had considered doing a anti-parasitic type of protocol in addition to the Western medicine that you're doing. There is clinical studies that say that it enhances the efficacy of the Western medicine. Um, so it's not an either or thing. You know, a lot of people think that because everybody expects you to vilify Western medicine, that this is an alternative to it, which it is, but it's not an ultimatum. I mean, you don't do it's not an either or. You could do both. In fact, for a period, I did do both, and I deal with a lot of people who are doing both, where their exposure to the chemotherapy and the side effects created by that have been minimized because they had to be on it less time.
Yeah.
So I think that if people look at repurposed medicine with an open mind, it doesn't have to be an either or thing. That's the only reason why I bring it up. I don't push it on nobody, so that's not what this is about. But
No, I
it's just,
understand. They're not
you know,
mutually exclusive. I get it. Yeah,
yeah,
and what I eat, how I eat, things like that. Like I take a ground up reishi mushrooms, which are supposed to be good for the lungs. I'm going to do everything I can, like you, and I think you would agree, to help Western medicine
of
enhance
course.
itself, to make it better.
Uh,
And I mean, as long as I'm not hurting myself, why wouldn't you want to do so?
Exactly. I mean, there's no toxicity in what I do.
Yeah.
You know, there's and honestly, I continue to. I still have a maintenance dose that I do every day, even though I've been no evidence of disease for a couple of years now. I take it as if my life depended on it because I feel like it does.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
know what? It doesn't do nothing too bad to me, and I feel insanely incredible. And I don't know if that's the reason. And I don't know. I don't. I'm not a scientist. I'm a Marine, dude. I mean, they're not that bright. You know, a lot of Marines aren't that smart. But no, you know what? I mean, I'm joking. I'm just saying it's see what I did.
Well,
But
can I follow up with that? A
no,
hundred.
no, you
I'm
can't.
going to follow up. I'm going to follow up. 163 of the top of the Fortune 500 are run by people who were in the Marine Corps. So don't tell me Marines aren't smart.
Well, you know what? The reason why we're so smart is because we want you to think that we're dumb. See, it's a strategy. It's all relative, man. It's 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 the briar don't throw me in the briar patch. Oh no. so, but so all right, so yeah, my thing is that that which doesn't kill you. I mean, you'd be crazy not to throw the kitchen sink at it. I mean, if it's not going to do, I don't know the long term effects of this. No, and I don't think anybody does. I mean, I know people that have been on it for decades, but I personally don't know, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But I do know the long term effects of cancer,
Yeah.
and I'll roll the dice with that one. So, so what are you doing? I mean, so that's all I'm going to say about this because I want to know what you're doing. Our audience wants to know what are you doing to make a difference in your life? How have you changed your lifestyle, your eating, your this, your that, all of that stuff that brings you to be the Terry Tucker of today, which I'm not even going to say your email yet because I want it to be at the end of this. So do you care if people like contact you about stuff?
No, I would love it.
Okay, we're gonna swing back to that one. So, but yeah. So I mean, the lifestyle that you've chosen or adapted to or transformed to become the thriving Terry Tucker that you are right now. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, one of the diagnostic tools that my doctor used to use was called a PET scan. And don't ask me what PET scan stands for; it's an acronym. But basically, it involves injecting you with radioactive sugar, waiting a period of time, and then scanning you. The idea being that the radioactive sugar will be picked up in your body by organisms, molecules that have a higher metabolism rate. And that's cancer. Cancer has a higher metabolism than your normal cells. So cancer will pick up that radioactive sugar at a faster, at a higher rate, and it will then glow on your scan. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I kind of figured, well, maybe sugar isn't something that I should be eating. So I've really I've gone keto as much as I possibly can. I'm not a nut about it.